Hi everyone, and welcome to the Millennial Revolt, an independent political talk show that seeks to bring a different narrative than the stale one we have going on right now in the mainstream media. So today we're going to be talking about a bill that was proposed back in June, which was a bipartisan effort. Now, if this passed, it would create a U.S. version of a Ministry of Truth. And I think it's important because this proposed bill didn't get the attention that it should have, the legacy media failing to do its job again, and the alternative media picking up the torch where they left off. Now, it's important that we discuss this bill because given what's happening right now in the state of the legacy media and what our politicians and government officials are doing, claiming that the Russians interfered in our election, the hysteria over fake news, and it's important because all of this seems to be connected. So there's so much to discuss, so let's just get right into it. Now, this piece of legislation was introduced in the House of Representatives, and the goal of this bill is to improve Washington's efforts to counter propaganda and disinformation that is spread by Russia, China, and other countries. The bill, which is H.R 5181, called the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016, comes amid growing calls and in many NATO capitals to do more to fight foreign disinformation acts. Now, it's very upsetting that this is being passed under the radar, basically. The legacy media, which its sole responsibility is to inform the American populace of what is going on, reported nothing on this. As usual, alternative media has picked up the mantle where these people have routinely failed. Now, for me, this bill is making it seem like the American people can't decipher what is true and what is false. And this is extremely important because this bill was proposed back in June. And now you have a situation where they're basically in hysterics saying that fake news helped tip the election to Donald Trump. So everything, it was being planted ahead of time, and now we're seeing everything coming to fruition, basically. Now, the bill was introduced by Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who's a Republican from Illinois, and it was co-authored alongside Congressman Ted Lieu, who's a Democrat from California. Now, it always seems that when these bills are introduced to curtail American freedom, that it's always a bipartisan effort. So don't believe when you see the Republicans railing, saying that we are the party of liberty, we're the party of small government who's going to restore your rights. It's all bullshit. It's all basically theater. And don't believe when Democrats are saying that we're the party of the working people, that we are the party who respects people's rights. That's bullshit too. It's all theater as well. In Congress, you basically have a bunch of neocons and neoliberals, though there are some people who are actually trying to help, but they are very small in numbers. Now, the whole idea of the bill is to set up a whole of government approach without bureaucratic restrictions, which will set up an innovative partnership to combat information warfare with organizations that have experience in countering foreign propaganda. Now, Congressman Adam Kinzinger said that as Russia continues to spew its disinformation and false narratives, they undermine the United States and its interests in places like Ukraine, while also breeding further instability in these countries. He said, at a time when countries like Russia and China are engaging in hybrid warfare campaigns, the United States has a unique opportunity to respond to foreign manipulation by encouraging the free flow of truthful information. This can further prevent conflict and ensure future stability. Now, I want you to refer to my previous video that I made called Fake News Hysteria Part 2, where I talk about the Smith-Mundt Act, how the United States has repealed that. This act basically ensured that the U.S. government didn't engage in spreading false information and disinformation on the American populace. This was repealed back in 2013. I really go into depth in that video, so please check that out. So basically, that they're saying they want to basically counter what they call foreign propaganda. Now, we also do have a news agency which is specifically designed to do that, which is taxpayer funded, which is Voice of America. Now, Congressman Lieu said that there need to create a better paradigm in the information sphere is vital to U.S. national interests, as the alleged nature of Russian and Chinese information dispersal makes the world less safe. He said, from Ukraine to the South China Sea, foreign disinformation campaigns do more than spread anti-Western sentiments. No, Americans' actions overseas spreads anti-Western sentiments. He says they manipulate public perception to change the facts on the ground, subvert democracy, and undermine U.S. interests. In short, they make the world less safe. He says this act ensures that the U.S. uses all the tools at our disposal to disrupt these vitriolic propaganda campaigns and empower those being manipulated with truthful information. The truth can be a powerful remedy to destabilization and conflict, and we must do all we can to make sure it is heard in the world over. Now, the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016, according to U.S. lawmakers, seeks to promote independent press in countries that are seen by Americans as vulnerable to foreign disinformation. Those selected to serve as U.S. information officers will be selected from a list of participants in educational and cultural exchange programs from countries deemed vulnerable to foreign propaganda and disinformation campaigns. To battle the information, the State Department seeks to establish a Center for Information Analysis and Response that will collect and analyze information on information warfare efforts. The center will also be tasked with countering and exposing information operations directed against American national security interests by producing its own narratives that support U.S. and its allies' aims in the foreign regions. So there is no misunderstanding about this bill. This bill isn't something that's noble where you just have a group of people who are dedicated to putting out truthful information. This is not what this is. If this legislation is passed, it's basically allowing the U.S. government to put out pro-American propaganda to infiltrate your cable, your online, your mainstream news organizations whenever the government deems it's necessary to do. That is extremely dangerous what's happening right now, and it's bringing us back into a Cold War era mentality. H.R. 5181 would allow the Secretary of State to coordinate with the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and the Broadcasting Board of Governors to establish a Center for Information Analysis and Response, which will pinpoint sources of disinformation, analyze data, and in true dystopic manner, develop and disseminate fact-based narratives to counter propaganda. So basically, it seems that the U.S. is losing the information war. They're not winning the hearts and the minds of people in Asia, as well as people in Eastern Europe. So they're trying to basically stop what they call Chinese and Russian propaganda from getting out, and they're going to create their own propaganda. This is basically what they're telling you. This is what this bill is basically summing up and saying. Listed among 9 core duties of this propaganda response squad, according to the bill's text, it will emphasize by identifying current and emerging trends in foreign propaganda and disinformation, including the use of print, broadcasting, online, and social media. Support for third-party outlets such as think tanks, political parties, and non-governmental organizations such as NGOs. And the use of covert and clandestine special operators and agents to influence targeted populations and governments in order to coordinate and shape the development of tactics, techniques, and procedures to expose and refute foreign misinformation and disinformation in foreign lands. Now, there was another bill that was introduced back in March called the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016, which is the S2692. It was introduced by Senator Rob Portman. Now, if any of these bills are actually implemented, on some level they would operate in the U.S. and they would leave the door to widening the scope and focus for the future to allow the U.S. to operate and engage in propaganda and disinformation on American citizens. So it's very Orwellian what's going on. It's very odd that no one's even talking about any of this. House Resolution 5181 and Senate Resolution 2692 are two bills that are circulating through Congress that seeks to change some of the U.S. international media operations. Now, if both of these bills are passed because they're both being proposed, the bill H.R 5181 would also set up an information access fund which would assist in training of local journalists as well as award grants and contracts to non-government and civil society organizations, research centers, private sector companies, media organizations, and other experts outside the U.S. government that have experience in identifying and analyzing disinformation methods used by foreign governments. If created, the new agency will add to the efforts of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which is the BBG, which includes Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Radio Free Asia, and the Middle East Broadcasting Networks, which is Allure TV and Radio Sawa. The BBG was established in accordance with the International Broadcasting Act in 1994. The BBG oversees the International Broadcasting Bureau, the IBB, which provides multimedia broadcasting distributions, as well as technical and administrative support to the broadcasting networks. The IBB manages a global network of transmitting sites and an extensive system of leased satellite and fiber optic circuits, along with a rapid growing internet delivery system servicing the 61 languages of the BBG networks. The BBG has become a formally independent autonomous entity on October 1st of 1999. As a result, the Foreign Affairs Reform and Reconstructing Act of 1998. The BBG has 3,592 employees and has a budget of over $750 million. To give you guys a little bit of background on the BBG and the U.S. international broadcasters, which includes radio, television, and internet. It reaches 206 million people per week. Now, the BBG is composed of 9 members who are supposed to have expertise in communications, media, and international affairs. The Secretary of State automatically has 1 seat, although the remaining 8 members are supposed to be appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. The positions are supposed to go to 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans to reflect the nonpartisan mission of the BBG. Now, the introduction of this legislation was influenced by what was happening overseas, so it has an international background. Last September, the EU launched a rapid response team of officials within the European External Action Service, the EESA, to deal with so-called Russian propaganda. The team monitors Russia foreign broadcasters and advises the EU and national authorities and their media campaigns accordingly. The group helps journalists in the Eastern Partnership countries, the Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. The officials are ready to communicate and help provide journalistic trainings. The NATO Strategic Communications Center Excellence, NATO Stratcom COE, became functional in January of 2014. Based in Riga, Latvia, it contributes to improved strategic communication capabilities within the alliance and allied nations. Its main missions for 2016 include study how social media is being used as a weapon in hybrid warfare, support the development of NATO Military Committee strategic communication policies and doctrine, and other things related to information warfare. Last May, NATO launched a training program in Riga teaching advanced counter-propaganda techniques designed to help member states assess and counter Russian propaganda in Eastern Europe. 20 intelligence analysts, psychologists, and military and defense personnel from across NATO countries will be trained in what it is known as target audience analysis, a scientific application developed by the UK-based Behavioral Dynamics Institute that involves a comprehensive study of audiences, groups, and forms the basis for interventions aimed at reinforcing or changing attitudes and behaviors. Significantly, the methodology increases the resilience of susceptible audiences and enables them to withstand foreign propaganda effects. The program is funded by the Government of Canada through a contribution to the NATO Strategic Communications Centre of Excellence. The program is delivered by the UK-based Strategic Communications Laboratories, the SCL Defense, which has worked for the UK Ministry of Defense and the United States Department of Defense for a number of years, and the world's only company licensed to deliver the behavioral dynamic process, and a team of information warfare experts drawn from several nations called the IOTA Global. SCL's teams of leading experts in target audience analysis, military influence experts from IOTA Global, and the leading academics from the Behavioral Dynamics Institutes will run the course of over a 3-month period at the National Defense Academy of the Republic of Latvia and Riga on behalf of the NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence. The development of these scenarios seems extremely lifted from the pages of George Orwell's 1984. With the experience of working for special services, Orwell wrote a book that served as a warning of what was to come. So I just want to keep you guys informed about the kind of bills that are being proposed in our House of Representatives, as well as the kind of bills that are being proposed in our Senate, because nobody really talks about them. They don't get that much attention in the legacy media, but as always, the alternative media picks up the torch. And it's important that we know that they are trying to propose these kinds of bills, because if they're doing this overseas, how long do you think it's going to be till they start doing this in our own backyard? So it's very important that we're vigilant, that we're aware of what's going on, and we hold our representatives accountable, because we elected these people who are in office who are proposing this kind of legislation. So I'm the Millennial Revolt. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye.